Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. Every year I do an annual trellising video, and this is 2024's trellising video. Going to probably cover 30-40 different trellises. Everything will be time-stamped. It's going to be a long video, and you can just jump through to the different trellises that interest you most. Let's start outside the garden. This is something that I just put together real quickly. Could be made to look a little bit nicer, but it's a T-post in the ground, and then I just use some 2x4s and set up a basic trellis for my grapevine. This grapevine's going to be here a long time, hopefully. It's going to get heavy, it's going to get thick, and I want to have 2 levels for the grapevine. This will get pruned up, and I just put in the T-post, secured the 2x4 to it. The 2x4 is probably going to rot out at some point, so I wanted the steel in there, and this is going to stay together for a really long time. Very simple. As it gets covered more and more with the grapevine, you'll kind of see this, a little bit less of this Frankenstein assembly right here, but that gives you, a good idea of something basic you can, put your grapevine on. Great for kiwis, muscadines, any kind of crop that's a perennial, woody stem, and it's going to be around for a long time. All right, let's just walk into the garden, see what I have going on with respect to trellising, and again, use the timestamps. And please subscribe. I'm trying to reach 750,000 YouTube subscribers, so every person really helps me out, so I appreciate that. In here is a heavier gauge piece of fencing, almost 5 feet tall, circle. This makes a great trellis, nice and wide that I can put my hand in here. Last year I grew a tomato plant in there. I've grown cucumbers on both sides. This year I'm waiting a little bit longer, but I'm going to put some melons in there, and I'm going to grow the melons up the cage and then back down, and I'll be able to tend and take care of it. It's also going to keep the deer out because this part of the garden is on the outside of my main garden, which we'll get into soon. But just old fencing, this is, probably like 20 years old. It was at the farm that I volunteer at. So I brought some over here, and it's just nice, it's going to be perfect for what I want to do with it. There's a difference between T-posts and U-posts. T-posts are nice and thick. They're in the shape of a T. There create a T. U-posts create a U. They're more fragile. Now, the cool thing about this is the T-posts I get at Tractor Supply. They come in 5 feet, 6 feet, 7 feet, 8 feet. They're a little more expensive now. But this post was an 8-foot post. It's going to last forever, good 20 years. It was about $8 when I bought it. If I was going to buy a 1x1 piece of wood, it's going to still cost me $8. And that wood is eventually going to kind of rot at the bottom and get smaller and smaller over the years, even if it's pressure treated. The T-posts are solid. I mean, just really nice. You can do anything with them, and you're going to see them throughout my garden creating different kinds of trellising. The U-posts work too, but they're expensive, especially if you go to Home Depot or Lowe's. So I recommend going to Tractor Supply or a farm supply company in your area and getting T-posts. And for this, I'll just put a T-post in the ground. That will be for a tomato plant. Perfect for that. I can also just put some fencing. This is a smaller gauge fence, which means the wire is thinner and it bends easier. This is actually to keep the deer from going in there. But if I kind of fasten this right onto the posts, I can grow peas, I can grow beans, I could weave different things through there, and it makes a nice little trellis. All right, let's head into the main garden. This is ladder mesh. Now, it's hard to find. I get mine at Home Depot. Not everybody has it. Sometimes people say they go and ask for it, and they get strange looks from the employees. But it's ladder mesh. It's usually outside by the wrought iron, other fencing products. It's a masonry product, so you might have to go to a specialized store. But it comes in 8-foot, 10-foot, and even 12-foot sections, and it's not that expensive. And I can just bend it and create different shapes and use it in different ways in the garden. As I walk around, I will show that to you. But perfect for growing crops right up there. And it's pretty solid. I mean, it's going to move a little bit, but lighter melons could go up there. Certainly beans and all that. It's just a nice way to have something that's flexible. I also use this to create the U's or the hoops. Sometimes if I'm going to put shade cloth down, or I'm going to put plastic down or something like that. So I make a little low tunnel of shade cloth or plastic, and it helps me manage what I want to grow that year. You can get 2 pieces and put them together like I did right here, and I just fastened them up right at the center. And as we go through this video, I'll be really talking about the construction and showing you more about it. They're just secured together with zip ties. I forget how big it was. Maybe these were 2 8-foot pieces. Anyway, I secured them in the ground with a stake because they are flimsy, and I was growing my sweet potatoes right up this. I was growing the sweet potato vines up there just to give them a place to grow, collect more light, and it worked out really well. Fence is a basic trellis that we can use depending on how you use it and locate it in a garden. But fencing is a great way, and putting raised beds up against it on the other side. You know, I'm growing peas in there, but I'm using bamboo posts. We'll talk about that in a second. But you could grow cucumbers through that. The space is small enough. Now, on my fence, I want these smaller holes so rabbits and other animals can't get through. But it's nice and strong and sturdy. And a cucumber vine could go through there. It's not going to have any problems. This is thick enough that it's not going to cut into the vine. We'll talk more about that as we look at different trellising. But it'd be perfect for cucumbers, and this would just be a nice wall of cucumbers. There's a lot going on in here, getting great growth out of my pea plants. Again, that's a T-post. That was a 6-foot post, and I'm, growing a tomato plant up there. Same thing over on this side. The peas are being supported by just bamboo stakes. They were about 6 feet tall, and you want them to be, if you want, say, 5 feet of space, you want at least a 6-foot post, because you're going to have to sink it down into the ground a good 12 inches for it to be secure. You could use tree branches to save some money, but I just put in a bunch of the 6-foot posts, grew the peas right up there. They hang onto each other, they hang onto the post. Peas have hollow stems, so they need to hang on to something or they're going to really just bend over in the wind, and they don't die off, but they get all crumpled up and they're laying on the ground, and you get pest problems and all that. You can also, if you want to be fancy, you could grow things up sunflowers. Like you could use a sunflower as a trellis and grow beans or something up there. This is one of my favorite builds, and if you go on my channel and you just look up trellising, you'll find detailed builds of everything that I'm really talking about. These are just metal bottoms of each shelf of a metal rack, of a metal shelf. Nice and solid. You can find these a lot of times at thrift stores, at garage sales. A lot of people disassemble dog kennels, with the high sides to it, and it's not necessarily a kennel. Maybe a pen or something that you would use in the house to keep your dog in a certain space. I just took one shelf bottom, another shelf bottom, created an A-frame, and I just used clothesline to tie it off. I also put in a piece of metal. You could use metal, be as fancy as you want. But this is just sitting here. It's not doing anything. It closes up. It opens up. I can set it up however I want. Perfect A-frame, nice and thick. I can grow anything I want up this. I can grow it up one side, down the other. What I like about this is if I pick it totally up, it's going to close flat. Really easy to store. My southern sun comes this way, so I can leave it open facing the southern sun. Anything in there is going to get some light. I could turn it the other way, and then whatever grows up it is going to block the sun from getting down to the ground, and I could use that to grow crops that maybe don't like the heat of the sun. I really like this. This is probably the cheapest and most efficient trellis that you can build. Just look for any kind of wire rack that's sturdy, and you just tie it off at the top. You make an A-frame, and you've got something beautiful. Now, right in there, I don't know how good your eye is, but it is a rusted piece of concrete mesh. You can find that at Home Depot, or you can buy, like the cage that I showed you originally outside of the garden, you can find fencing that looks like that. The thicker gauge, something that is really hard to bend, and you can cut it into pieces. This is just sunk right into the shape of this raised bed, and then I put in the soil, and it stays like this. It's been like this for 5 years. Growing peas up it right now. I also put in cucumbers. I do. I put in a grape tomato right in there. That's actually, if you're wondering, it's called sugary grape. And I'm just going to trellis the tomato vine all through there and harvest my tomato that way. You can really do all kinds of different things. When you buy this as concrete mesh, it's what you kind of feel like if you're building a sidewalk or something with concrete, you sink this in there, it makes the concrete stronger because it's got the metal in there. They can be kind of expensive, but you can find rolls of this material and just cut it into the shape that you want. All right, let's go over here, give you another example of the ladder mesh. So in here I have the mesh going from one side to the other side. So I have 1 piece, 2 piece, 3 piece. I usually use that for peas. In here is a nice little U-post. There's the U-post shape. That's how it gets its name. So it's not as strong as the T-post. And I'm growing a tomato plant up there. Usually I grow peas in there. I just didn't need any more peas. You saw all that I have, and I did that over here. In this case, I just have 2 pieces of the ladder mesh, one going that way, one going this way. The peas are all hanging nicely on there. And in the center, I have a tomato cage that I wasn't using. By the time, you know, these finish out, I may need this cage for a tomato plant or a pepper plant. But right now, I'm just using it to support the growth of the peas. So this little setup makes a beautiful trellis. I mean, these guys are sturdy. And these are shelling peas. I think these are arrow peas. So they're not quite ready yet, but they're on their way to filling out. So when the peas die off, I'll plant something else using this piece, and I'll probably remove this cage and use it for my tomatoes or my peppers. Here's another example of the concrete mesh or the thicker gauge fencing that goes into this 100-gallon root pouch. I sell all these fabric pots at my seed and garden shop. This is a 100-gallon, that one's a 20-gallon, that one's a 10-gallon. Perfect for growing vegetables. And this is kind of a setup I have just to show people how to use fabric pots. And again, please subscribe. My garden is set up as a teaching garden, so there's all kinds of different options in here that you could use, hopefully for your garden, and I hope that it helps you out. When you're buying cages for tomato plants, you want to get the cages that have this thick gauge. The lower the number is, the thicker it is, just FYI, but you know, you want it to be something like this. I can't really bend this. This is going to support a tomato plant. Perfect for the 100-gallon containers because there's a lot of earth in there. These are the flimsier wire cages that I don't recommend. They're great for peppers, but they're not going to hold up a tomato plant. They get bent really easy. You can see spending a little bit more on something nicer. They're both the same age. These just stay in really good shape. They're just being stored here right now. I've got cucumbers growing in the back. They're going to get thinned out to crawl up on the concrete mesh back there. I may leave 1 or 2 in there also for the cucumbers, but you can use tomato cages for different, you know, trellising needs. When you get to the smaller fabric pots or the smaller containers, it doesn't matter, any kind of container, when you have less earth in there, it can be hard to create a trellis because it just keeps falling over. So you can create this teepee, and it's getting any kind of post or stick, tree branches, whatever. You put it on the outside so that it's going in here, and it's being supported really by the outside of the container. And you go straight up, and then in the middle you put another post or stake, and then you just bend them all in and you tie them off here, and you create this really nice teepee where the pressure of the bottom of the trellis is pushing outward. It stays in place, and it can really support bigger plants. In this case, it's supporting some peas. I also put some twine down there for more area for the peas to hang on to. Peas put out these little tendrils, and they like to really secure themselves to each other, of course, and to like string or anything that you put in there. I really like that design for containers. People always ask me, how do you support plants in containers? This works really well for the containers that are shallower. Right here, I've just dropped in one of those thicker tomato cages, and that doesn't really need trellising, but I just had it in there and I just let the kale grow through that. But you get the idea how it can be used. Basic posts, nothing fancy. You know, the bottoms are open in my raised bed, so it's real easy just to stick a post in. You're going to have to trellis your pepper plants. They are somewhat fragile and they break really easily, so you do want to secure them a little bit. A couple more examples of the tomato cages and peas. I also like these. These are from Gardener Supply, like a decade and a half ago. My mom had these, so I don't know if you can get them. But they are just nice and sturdy. Fit nicely into the 100-gallon fabric pot. Perfect in the ground. Really thick gauge here. You can grow a cantaloupe plant straight up this. You could grow a cucumber plant straight up this. It would look really cool. And then of course you let it kind of come back down. Perfect for a tomato plant that you just, you know, trellis it straight up through here, the main stem, and then the branches come out here. But there's all kinds of different cages that you can get for tomatoes, and you can reuse them. And you can reuse them for all kinds of different crops. You can, you know, just kind of use your imagination. But I really like those, and they sit about almost 5 feet tall once they're in the ground, and that's plenty enough height for trellising a lot of different plants. You can see I have different stakes all over the place, and I use them for different things. The T-posts, 1, 2, 3, growing indeterminate tomatoes up there, and I have 9 of them going all the way down there. 9 tomato plants, 9 T-posts, work really well. If I wanted to create something different, maybe I was growing melons or cucumbers or beans, I would just get some jute, some natural string, and just put every probably 12 inches, just string it across, all the way across. And then I would have a beautiful trellis for cucumbers and beans to grow up. Nothing needs to be perfect, nothing needs to be pretty. These are just 2 posts going into the ground. That's the jute I'm talking about. Here's a small scale example. And I'm just tying, you know, the jute post to post. You can use whatever you want. I like using something that's thicker. You can get, you know, thinner rope, string, or whatever you're using. If it's too thin, it's going to cut into the plant. So you want something hefty that the plant can grab onto, and it supports the plant without damaging it. But I will just tie this up, and I'm using it for my green beans. And it's, you know, again, nothing fancy. I could tie it off here, make it look a little more fancier, but it's going to be perfect for the green beans. The rope that you see down here, that was really set up so that I can put plastic along here and grow into the later fall here. I'm in Maryland Zone 7. That can also be used, you know, as a basic design for creating the trellis. Like you can see the T-poster right there, that's for a tomatillo, for a tomato plant. And I would just, you know, every 12 inches, put some of that rope on there, and you have, you know, a beautiful design for a basic trellis. You don't have to spend a lot of money. A lot of times you can find these posts at yard sales and garage sales. You can find all kinds of different things, and I just like to repurpose them. One of my favorite trellises is really using these closet racks that you get at Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart. You know, they're a little bit expensive, but these have been with me for a solid 7 or 8 years. I took these from my other property. Now, you can find these at thrift stores. You can find them at, you know, shops that kind of repurpose material for like Habitat of Humanity or something like that. You can go in and buy stuff that builders give them. You can find these in the trash. People are throwing them out. You can find them everywhere. So these are, I think, 10-foot closet racks. They are secured to a T-post because I love them and they last forever. T-post goes in, supports the piece of closet, and then I just, if you tie it on with anything like cotton or something like that, eventually it's going to decay. So sometimes, you know, just for an example, or to tighten it up for this year, I put on a piece of the cotton, but I use wire to secure the closet rack to the T-post, and this is going to grow asparagus beans up there, and it's nice and tall, so you can see the remains right up there of last year's asparagus beans. And if it gets, you know, above that, I can reach it. I'm a little over 6 feet. I just start bending the beans down, and then you trellis them back down, and then you let them go back up. But it works really well. Now maybe you don't need something that tall. We just got 1.5 inches of rain last night. You can use the shorter racks, set up the same way using U-posts. The peas look wonderful. That's why I didn't grow any more peas. You see I have peas everywhere. I absolutely love them. Highly recommend growing what you love and growing more of it than you think. That works really well. This section has always been for cucumbers and peas. As these die out, when I get into my 3rd, 4th round of cucumbers this year, they're going to just be planted along that base. I wanted to build a giant A-frame trellis. So I did. I have a full build video on this. I will put it in the video description. I will put a lot of the trellis build videos in the video description. But you can see how tall it is. This is 10 foot tall. It is built just by using 2x4s, and you just get hinges that fit the design you want. Those are bigger hinges, and you just screw the boards to it. This will actually close and lay flat almost flat because I put some wood on the inside, but it's going to close and it's going to be smaller. Now on the inside, every, I don't know what that was, 6 inches or so, I put screws on both sides and I strung it with a really thick kite string, perfect for lighter crops like beans and peas and stuff like that. If you get heavier crops that have heavier fruit, because this is thin, it could cut into the vine. I am going to do a light cantaloupe. I think I have it coming up right down there, and one cantaloupe is going to go up this side. It's going to be okay, you know, but you could use thicker string if you're growing crops that have heavier fruits on it. When you're trellising upwards too, it's not going to be a problem for the vine to grow where it wants to grow, and you know, you grow it up, you bend it back down, but the fruits are going to get heavy, so you're going to have to create sort of a fruit hammock. So as the fruit gets bigger, it doesn't pull the vine through and it doesn't rip itself off the vine. So if a fruit was forming here, you know, you just get some cloth, drape it under there, tie it to the top, and you create this little sock or hammock to hold the fruit, and you would do that right on to the different parts of the trellis. You could build this with fencing, wire mesh, whatever you want to do, but I like this simple design and it's easy for me to move. The main tip I have here is when you're using wood, you don't want this to sit in the earth because it's going to decay really quickly. The insects in water, you know, it creates a little habitat for them to start chewing into there. The other thing that's important is because this is hinged, it will open up much wider. So I have to go put another screw right here and another screw over here, and this is the size that I want it to be so that it rests down on the brick, and then I'm just going to get a piece of rope and tie it to the screws that I put in there. This way this can't open up more. If I'm worried about it collapsing or opening, then I would just take a piece of wood, something rigid, put the screw into the one side of the piece of wood, bring it out over to here, put that screw in, and this is not going to close or open, which means it's not going to slip off the bricks down here. I'm not sure where I'm going to keep this. Most likely right here because I have the cantaloupe coming. If not, I'll put another trellis in. But I just wanted to build something that was really huge, and you can swap out the different string, you know, grow different things on there, and I think it's going to be beautiful. You know, come winter, the garden looks a little bit of a mess to people. I like the way it looks because you have all these trellises everywhere, but you have to imagine that this is just covered in something beautiful, flowering, fruiting, and it's going to be really, really cool. This is where I'll be growing my butternut squash. This is another example of an A-frame. Now I got this at a local hardware store, and you can see it picks up and closes. That's what the one I built really for almost free because I got the parts for free. You know, I think this was maybe 15 bucks, which was pretty reasonable, I thought, and I get, you know, a lot of uses out of it. Let me just drop this over here. So I grow butternut squash in this section. Now, butternut squash, if you've not grown it before, it's going to get 12 feet tall, so it gets really big. This is flimsier fencing, but it works. You can see the remains of some of the squash or beans actually that I put in here from last year. I mixed beans and butternut together, worked out pretty well. The thinner the fencing, or you know, the higher the gauge number is, it's going to be sort of flexible and bend, and you may not want that. Using these U-posts, they all hook into these little tabs right here, so it makes it nice and secure. So this is a pretty solid trellis for beans, peas, lighter melons. You can use it for all kinds of different things. The butternut squash starts over here, and this is a part of the concrete mesh that I used that you saw in the ground that I bent into a U. And this is just going up vertically. Now I probably should have had bigger U-posts, but it's secure in there. And what I did to just make the top more rigid is I just weaved a bamboo stake through there. You know, every, I don't know, 2 squares I just rotated back and forth, and that gives us some rigidity. The butternut squash will grow straight up this. It will grow back down the side. It grows out over into my compost pile, and then I send some of it over to here. But these are nice basic designs for a trellis. Now, the summer sun, well, the sun all the time, I don't know why I said that. The southern sun is what I wanted to say, is over here to my right, the western sun behind me. So I put this trellis right here so that the front of the bed gets maximum sun. The bed on the other side is going to get shade when this is all filled in, but I'll be growing cool weather crops. That's kohlrabi, lettuce, stuff that's not going to like as much heat of the summer. So hopefully I get longer periods of growth for my cool weather crops back there where they don't bolt and flower. So I'm looking to keep the soil back there cooler with the shade from right here. So as my sun tracks, you know, plenty of light will come into here. It's just not going to be the mid-afternoon sun that's just pounding down on the ground. When you're setting up your trellises, you want to have where the sun is, like I was just saying, in mind. Straight over to the right, that way, western, southern, southern sun, western sun. The whole front here gets plenty of sunshine. I put the trellises so that it's really perpendicular with the south and the west, and more sun will pour into the path over there, get to the crops over there, and into the front. If I turn these like right in the middle, they're going to cast shade to half of my garden bed. So you want to be thinking where you put them. You know, we were just talking about the trellis over there. You can see how this will, you know, allow the sun to fall right into that bed, and then it's going to create the shade there. So you're really looking, you know, this is not, you don't always have to face them south or north or west or east. You can just shape them to how your sun tracks south to west. And that really allows the sun to pour in this direction. And if I want to create shade, then I put my trellises in like that. If I want them to be more open, I put them perpendicular to that direction. Every garden isn't going to be perfectly south facing, so your trellising is going to change just to be based on how you designed your garden. Love cattle panel. They come in, what do they come in? 4 feet by 16 feet, I think. They're big. They're about $35 now. They're going to last forever. I get them at Tractor Supply. Had beans growing up here. I put this into my 8-foot bed so that it's here, makes a huge hoop, comes down the other side. Everything in here, as I was just explaining, the sun will mostly be hitting here when it's the high sun period during the day, really heating up the soil. This will be protected, and I can grow different plants in here that need protection from the heat. Like when it gets to July and August and the temperature is getting up to 90 degrees, your top couple inches of your soil are getting up to 90, 100, 110, even hotter. And that warm soil, that hot soil actually, can send signals to your tomato plants, to your pepper plants to shut down. They drop blossoms, they don't produce fruit, and it's just because it's too hot, so they go into survival mode. So I'm growing a couple tomato plants in here. They're going to get shade from this scallop squash and beans that are up here, and I'm looking to really protect them so that come July, August, they continue to flower and produce. This is just one way to put the cattle panel in. Here is another way. This is going from the edge of this box all the way up. It's making an arch and making a tunnel into the other box. The sunlight is going to pour into there, so I'm not really screening the beds in any way. The shadows just aren't going to fall into any place that I'm growing, and I want to be able to walk down the path. I want sunlight to come into here. I want sunlight to come into the other side. The grapes, look at the cucumbers. I mean, they are taking off since it had all that rain. Are doing extremely well. So I've positioned this trellis so that it really doesn't block any of the sun getting to any of the plants on either side. So this is created with a couple different things. It has the ladder mesh. I'm using 1/2-inch PVC pipe, and for 1/2-inch PVC pipe, let's go over to this one. You want to match the width, which is a 1/2 inch, with a piece of rebar that's the same. That's a 1/2-inch rebar. That's probably a 12-inch piece, hammered in a good 8 inches, and then I just slide the PVC onto it, secures it in place, able to make a hoop here for a hoop house, or really for growing. This is going to be a place where my cucumbers grow up. But you can kind of create this design as you wish. This is kind of cool. This is a old frame for some sort of little greenhouse nursery thing. They always get beat up. That plastic always breaks. But the frame stays intact. You could actually grow beans and stuff up this and create something that looks kind of cool. It would actually be the shape of the house. You'd have beans. You could grow vines up the side, drop them down. If you needed more trellising, you could just put some of that jute right across here, and you could really make a nice trellis out of this. You could also turn it on its side. I'm not going to pick it up because it looks like I secured it down there. But you could turn it on its side and you could grow up that. So you can really repurpose some of those plastic greenhouses that got damaged for you. And this was really probably a cold frame. It was more of a greenhouse cold frame, and the front opened up and I would put the plants in there. But you can use your imagination and create all kinds of designs out of stuff that you might otherwise have thrown away. Closet rack right there, using some 4x4 deck railing posts to secure that. You can see the T-posts and everything that are in there. Be creative, and really think about how you want your garden to look. This is the ladder mesh at its full height, which is it is 10 feet. And then I'm just using 1x1 posts, which again are like $6 or $8, probably more now. And they do decay at the bottom and they get smaller. That's why they are different sizes. But I put in the post, put the wire mesh or the ladder mesh through that, and I'll be able to grow something up there. And I have Space Master bush cucumbers, which I'll just trellis up there. They're not going to get really big. They're just left over from something I was doing before. Smaller pieces of the ladder mesh cut. You can create trellising that way. This I really like. This is made from deck railing. Now it's expensive this way, but you could also build the deck railing, and again, it's an A-frame, and I just got some of the hinges, longer hinges, and put them together. This will close flat. It's easy to store, and this is all pre-made. It's really hefty, perfect for melons, any kind of heavy fruiting crop. You do have to support the fruit again, but it's perfect. And last year I had it turned with the side right here, and the center was open, and that worked fine. This year I want to create something again that has shade, so that I can grow some of the cool weather crops in there. Maybe extend my season for growing lettuces. The lettuces look beautiful. It's starting to get warm. They're going to bolt. But if I have something growing on here, it's going to keep that soil cooler, and maybe I can plant another round of lettuce or something in there. But I really like it. It is solid. I mean, this is not going to go anywhere. You could grow anything that you want up that. Now, if you have smaller vines, they might have a hard time grabbing onto this. So you could also put some string. You could put some screws like right there and put some jute through there. You could put some jute at the bottom and just take it straight up, and then take it straight back down, and then straight up again. And you could just put some string on there. So if you're growing something like peas or something that has little finer tendrils that can't grab onto the wood right here because it's too wide, just add some string to it. It's going to work out nicely. And when you look at it, you can see that I can just access whatever I need right from the side when I'm walking down the path. I really like that design. Some more of this is actually 1/2 inch. Well, let me think. This is actually 3/4 of an inch. So it's 3/4 inch PVC, which I recommend because it's stronger. This is 1/2 inch, and it's a little more flimsy. I use this for a little bit of a hoop house, but again, this could be used for trellising in some way. Another design, like where I'm growing my butternut squash, design so the front of the bed gets all the southern and western sun. The shade gets really dropped right into the path. It's going to shade the pepper plants a little bit when the height of the summer heat shows up here in Maryland. And I'm growing peas there right now. And then that's a cherry tomato plant that will actually grow. I mean, it's indeterminate variety. It's going to go all the way up here. So it will be creating shade for my pepper plants. I like the T-posts. These are 5-foot T-posts, all in the ground. Here's a basic trellis that I just designed using paracord. And it's at, every 8-12 inches you put a row of string. And my beans are growing right up it. Beans will also just wrap themselves right around the post. It's taller now. When it gets taller, I'll just send it over this way. And this will all fill out, be a beautiful trellis. Again, this is perpendicular to the south and west. So the sun comes whipping into here, or shining into here. And this is not going to cast shade onto the peppers that are down here. I was saying earlier that I don't like using the jute because it decays. It's a natural fiber, that's all great. Even this polycord stuff will eventually decay. I like using this wire. This is wire that I got from Tractor Supply, and it's used for electric fences, you know, fencing. And it's really inexpensive for, like, you know, 100 yards or, you know, 100 feet or 200 feet, relatively speaking. It's going to last forever. I just tie it to one post, bring it all the way through, and again, it's not even spaced the same way. I just, you know, maybe did 12 inches, then, I don't know, 14 inches or whatever. But a couple rows of wire, I'm going to weave the tomato plants through it to hold some of the leaves and the vine and stuff like that. The main vine will get tied to a post for the maximum support, but the wire will really support the growth of the plant, really actually in the middle, right there. The plant over there is going to go up the cattle panel. This is my second one that I have arched the same way. And these beds are 4 feet by 8 feet. So it gives you an idea of how tall the arch is going to be in a 4 foot by 8 foot bed. If the bed was smaller, if it was 4 feet by 6 feet, the arch is going to be taller when you design it, which is fine. It really just depends on what you want to create. The tomato plant there will be supported by the main post, and then it's going to go right up the cattle panel, and I think that's going to look really cool. In here I have my sunken container garden where I grow 2 pepper plants per hole. I have a whole video on that where you can just, you know, cut out the bottom, sink it in, grow 2 pepper plants, double your production. I'm using the cheaper cages, basic trellis. In here, same thing, I have the U-post. This is asparagus. This is what asparagus looks like when you let it grow, and you have to do that. You have to harvest what you want, leave a lot of the spears to grow. They get 6, 8, 10 feet tall. So there's another post back in there, and I just put wire every 12 inches or so, and I just weave the asparagus through there. If not, it's going to flop over, it's going to shade out my peppers, so I use that as a support. Here's another design using the cattle panel. This again is facing southwest, creating shade in there. I have sunflowers coming up. They all self-seeded from last year. Have a cucumber plant. Look, I left my gate open once a couple days ago, and the tops here are chewed off, which means a deer got in here, had a few bites of things, and they could have done a lot more damage, so I'm lucky, and then left. So if you have a fence, that's great, but if you don't shut the gate, you're letting a deer in. Oh yeah, and it came in here and just chowed all this down right in there. So that's definitely from a deer. Hopefully it's not in here, or we could have a surprise. Cucumber will fix itself. It's going to be growing up here. I've got strawberries down here. I've got the sunflowers going through. The sunflowers can tend to flop over. So I grew them here. I left them stay here from when they self-seeded so that they actually grow through the cattle panel, and they're going to be supported. These are giant sunflowers that get 10, 12 feet tall. This way they don't flop over as they get heavier, and I think that's going to look really cool. But you can use the cattle panel for all kinds of different things, and a lot of times people don't think about trellising sunflower seeds or sunflower plants, but when they're getting to that 8, 10 foot height and they have these big flower heads, they tend to kind of lean over and fall over. I found these on sale at Home Depot or something like that. They were really inexpensive, and they're not huge, but I can make little A-frames just like I showed you. I would get a second one, put it right here, tie it off, and that's fine for like bushing cucumbers or something like that. It will create a little trellis, lift those cucumbers off the ground. These are really inexpensive, or they can be just put in the ground like this, support pea plants. Some pea plants, you know, 4 feet tall. Some pea plants only get 2 or 3 feet tall. So look for stuff that's on sale, and this can become your trellis. I just never got a chance to put it out. I actually got this at the end of last year. I always go to Home Depot. Here in Maryland, we get a winter. So a lot of the garden products go on sale for ridiculous prices in December and January. So they've just been sitting there. I'll do something with them. But that's the idea, is just keep in mind, you know, different things that are on sale that you find at thrift stores, and how could you possibly use them for creating trellises. I can't say enough about the T-posts. I have them all over the place. They're in a permanent place for my different tomato plants. I have 4 growing in here. If you were growing something else that was going to trellis upwards, any of your vining crops, you could just wrap jute all the way around this in some capacity, and you make this massive trellis in the corners of your 4-foot by 4-foot bed, and you could just have everything growing up there. You can't get much simpler than 4 posts in the ground and just wrapping jute or clothing line around it, and then, you know, grow whatever you want going upward. 4 posts right over there. This is my cattle panel tunnel arch. The spacing from here to here is about 4 feet, and you can see how tall this gets. This is about 8 feet tall at the peak. Now, these blackberries moved in a couple years ago, and I was doing actually 4 cherry tomatoes on the right, 4 cherry tomatoes on the left. That was too many cherry tomatoes. So I do 1 cherry tomato plant, 3 on this side. They will fill in this whole area, and I can walk from one end to the other end with a bowl, and when I come out, I have a bowl full of all kinds of different color and shape cherry tomatoes, which I think is really cool. But this is kind of one of the designs that I have for my garden. How am I using trellising to really create the atmosphere that I want in my garden? I'm going to spin around here, and you can see going straight down. I've been weeding out carrots and stuff like that. I have a clear path all the way down with different trellises, and I can just walk down here, check out what's growing, harvest stuff, and move my wheelbarrow down here. 2 people can walk down here and chat. I can talk about my garden. That person can talk about their garden, as we all love to do. And it's just a really good space, and it's designed with trellising and arches in mind to really make it something that I think is enjoyable. Spinning over here, these are my muscadines, and I have the same design. This tunnel that I just showed you for the cherry tomatoes, there's actually 3. 1, all right, there might be 4. Let me just check. 1, 2, yeah, I think there's 4 cattle panels going across, supporting my muscadines, and it's on the outside of the garden. There's lights inside, and you can just kind of walk through there and pick muscadines when you're ready in about, 60, 70 days. Great way to use the arch and the cattle panel. Now, when you go to get cattle panel, you're going to need a truck. Find a friend. If you can't do that, I recommend renting a U-Haul truck from Home Depot. It's really inexpensive for a couple of hours. And then just go to Tractor Supply or your farm store, and you can go ahead and pick up as much as you want. It bends really easily. You'll need 2 people to help you kind of deal with the size of it. But it's not that hard to move if you have the right truck. Now, let me show you what the tunnel looks like. These are the lights that I have strung on the outside of my garden over here because it gets really dark. And then it goes right into the tunnel. Here we are. I think this is really cool. Let's see if I was right. I got 1, 2, okay, so it's 3 panels going down there. Muscadines, crazy growers. The cattle panel arches are strong enough to support all the muscadines. I hack them back really, but look how beautiful this is. Like, I really love this look. I think this is in one of my books, this shot. Walk through here, you pick the muscadines, and it's pretty cool. And you can see I'm using the T-posts and the fencing to create my compost piles. Those are the basic tools. Like for trellising is T-posts, U-posts, some basic fencing, and then you can create whatever you really need out of it. Let's go into my other garden, show you some of the designs in here. And sometimes when you go into thrift stores, you'll find things like the pepper plants are doing well. This garden kind of gets overlooked at times, but I said pepper. The potatoes are doing extremely well. I mean, look at that. Beautiful. I'm going to have tons of potatoes. So when you go into the thrift stores, you find all kinds of different things. This was $5. I use it for cucumbers, for peas and stuff like that. This garden, I mean, I have so much garden, sometimes I don't really use the space in here, but I just wanted to show you, you can pick up something like this and just kind of, think about it. I think it looks really cool. The rustier it gets, the better it looks. The fence here is not optimal for things to grow on, so maybe I just take this and put it on the back there, grow the cucumbers up. Here's a larger version of what I was just talking about. And these are just room dividers, I think this was actually $12. It's a bigger size, perfect for cucumbers. I put in 2 posts. At times I would just take jute and go across the post. Cucumbers will grow up there. This will sit right into there when I get to my cucumbers, and they're going to grow right up that. And I think it creates a really nice trellis. It closes up, it's metal, it's solid, and it was really inexpensive, and it's just a, a product that I'm repurposing. I have a couple more trellises to show you. Just taking a look from this side, you can see how I use all kinds of different trellises in the garden. And when it's all full and everything is growing on them, it's really just a beautiful place to walk. I really, really like it. Now on the outside here, I'm growing hop vines. And there's nothing for them to trellis on here. This is a shorter variety, just flopping over the fence. But hop vines can get and want to grow 16, 18 feet tall. So I have telescoping poles right here. And what these are for, got these at Tractor Supply. And let's see, you can see them right in here. They are sunk into the ground in concrete, so they're not going to go anywhere. And then there's little things, I don't know if we can see it, but on the other side here, the bigger post is on the bottom, then a medium post, and then a small post. And then if I press the little tab on the other side, this will slide down, which I'm not going to do. But anyway, you can create this telescoping steel trellis that goes and supports a plant that's going to get a good 16 feet tall. And you can see how tall the hops are. And there's some of the hops growing if you've not seen that before. So 16-foot trellis. This is the fruit garden. I have different things in here, but for the hop vines, here's another one that is completely filled with the hops. Now these are supposed to be dwarf trees that I actually hacked back in the early spring, and they're just going crazy. They're gonna have to get trimmed again. Here's a better look at the pole. The hops vine here just didn't take hold, but you can see, the basic pole all the way up there. And usually what goes on top of there is a birdhouse. And again, you get this at Tractor Supply. Here's the inside of what I like to call the fruit room. Trellises help. The trees could be used for trellising too. I've grown cucumbers up trees before. Nothing with a canopy like this. You got to open up the canopy, let the light in, and let airflow go through. But you can actually use trees in some capacity. And I'll probably be doing that at some point. I've brought more dwarf trees in, actually true dwarf trees. Like these, they're just huge. They're 16 feet tall. That shouldn't be that tall. Well, maybe not 16 feet, 12 feet, 14 feet tall, but still they should be a little bit shorter. Coming into here, I have blackberries. They get really tall. They can get 12 feet tall. This year the crop is smaller. But again, T-posts, paracord, weave the blackberries up there, keeps them supported, they don't flop over. Nice way to maintain airflow. Also put these in so that when I'm growing the blackberries, the southern sun, western sun's right here, and sunlight is falling on both sides. Like I didn't want to build it this way because one side wouldn't get a lot of light. The plant itself would shade itself off. So by again being perpendicular to the west and south, you're going to be able to get sun on both sides. Now you could be perpendicular, direct south, direct west. For me, it's southwest. But the sun is going to fall on both sides. And then finally, I think we covered a whole lot. I have blackberries in here that seeded themselves in some capacity. Maybe birds drop seeds there. Instead of weaving the vine through here, I just put in 4 posts. These used to be 6-foot posts. I've had to cut the tops off because they've rotted and stuff like that. 4 posts in there, paracord around there, and that just allows the blackberries to grow upward and they're not flopping over or falling out and shading out the beds over here or the bed over here. Here's a bed that will be fixed up in some capacity. Another A-frame. As the blackberries get taller in here, they're going to cast shade back there, which I'll be growing some lettuces and stuff like that, using basic tomato cages for my eggplant over here. That's celery, in case you're wondering. I hope you found this helpful. Please subscribe. Help me get to 750,000 YouTube subscribers. I really like trellising, so I've really designed my garden around growing vertically. Saves you space, saves you money too in the long run, because you can grow more and you can harvest more and you can save money at the grocery stores. You can share it with friends and all that kind of stuff. When you don't have a lot of trellising, you're really stuck with having to grow stuff more flat, obviously, and you don't get as much produce. So I really recommend taking some of these ideas, thinking about what works in your garden, thinking about when you place it, which way is the shade going to fall. That's the biggest deal. And just have a lot of fun with it. Thanks so much for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com and enjoy trellising. You're going to find, I think, that it's a lot of fun. It really brings life to your garden, kind of makes you think in another dimension, sort of speaking, rather than just flat and the height of the plant. And you can grow and do all kinds of different things. And don't forget, you can put in flowering vines and different kinds of things. They don't all have to be edible right up the trellis like I have. You can't really see it, but there's a couple purple flowers here. They've already come and gone. Those are clematis vines. So clematis would do really well on some of these bigger trellises, and you just bring in some beautiful color to your garden. Thanks again for watching.